This is a very extreme, large-scale form of organ trafficking. Like, this is a whole different level that we're talking about.
Hello, Robert Kiyosaki, Rashad Radio Show. Again, we broadcast from Phoenix, Arizona. I always say this, it's either heaven or hell. And right now it's heaven, but soon it'll be hell. And every time I tell people I'm from Phoenix, especially Californians, they're not the brightest guys in the box, not matches in the box. They say, well, how do you handle the heat? I said, we have air conditioning, but it's still hot as hell here in the summer. We have an important show today because, as some of you know, we're at war today. This is March 26th, and we're at war in the Straits of Hormuz. And that's important because Iran just made an announcement that they're going to start they're asking or demanding what they're doing, but they want to get paid in yuan. So Iran wants to get paid in yuan, which is Chinese currency. That is a major world change right there, major. And the average person has no idea, well, what difference does it make, what currency you get paid in? Well, the yuan is Chinese currency. And what happened in 1974 in America was a man named Henry Kissinger went over to Iran or the Arab republics and said all oil will be traded in U.S. dollars. So just last week, this is March 2026, we're going to start be trading in yuan, Chinese money. Now, for an average person, that means nothing. But I'm afraid people don't know who we're dealing with. More than Iran is China. And some of my background is I read this book. I went to military school in New York, and we were required to read the Communist Manifesto. And I asked my economics teachers, why reading a Communist Manifesto? And as military officers know, is you must know your enemy. And we don't know our enemy in China. I took a company public in China, a gold mine in Dalian, China. And I listed it on the Toronto Stock Exchange. We raised $27 million for them. And we struck gold in China in 2004. And again, I didn't know who my enemy was. Chinese cannot be trusted. Not the Chinese people, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. It's called country risk. So after raising $27 million on the Toronto Stock Exchange for a gold mine in Dalian, China, and we struck gold, the biggest gold mine in China, the Chinese came over and said, thank you very much. It's ours now. So again, as my economics teacher said to me in 1965 at military school, read this book. You must know your enemy. And the Chinese are enemies. And I grew up in Hawaii where we dealt with, my classmates were Chinese or Japanese or Filipino or Portuguese. And the Chinese are different people. Not saying they're bad people, they're different. So today we have Jan, if I'm mispronouncing the name Jan, is Jekielek. Am I correct there?
Jekielek, close.
Okay, I said almost as bad as Kiyosaki, but and he's the author of this book here, Kill to Order. And it's a very important book for those who want to know your enemy. So if you think what's going to happen is we're going to have world peace in Iran, and China, Russia, and America will hold hands and sing Kumbaya, I don't think you know your enemy. And this book here is how treacherous, especially the Chinese, are. They're heartless sons of a bitches. Because when they took my gold mine, I went, what? How can you just take my gold mine? And they went, read between the lines. We don't know who our enemy is. So this book here is about organ harvesting, how they put, back in World War II, they did that. The Germans did it to the Jews. The Chinese are doing it to Uyghurs and own minorities in China, where they actually It's a business. So if you need a heart, why wait for somebody who needs a heart transplant? They just get a Uyghur, minority in China. They cut them open, take their heart, and kill them. But they'll take the heart and transplant it. They need a kidney. They just harvest it. I mean, that's pretty heartless and gutless. They do not have any feelings. I don't trust the Chinese. I've done business with them. You cannot trust them. The Chinese Communist Party. So Jan is part of Epoch Times, and Epoch Times is there fighting against the communists. I fought in Vietnam twice as a Marine pilot. I'm still fighting the communists. We've got to be very careful here. So this is Jan's book, Kill to Order. And Jan, welcome to the Rich Dad Show. It's a long introduction to you. But tell me what is this book about, this organ harvesting? Do they actually cut people open, take their hearts and transplant?
Yeah, Robert, thank you so much. And thank you for endorsing the book as well. I have to say, when I read it, I was just deeply touched. And because this book resonated with you in a way I wasn't even expecting it would with many people. I mean, there's two parts to it. Okay. One part is explaining how this is a very extreme, large scale form of organ trafficking, like not we hear about these sort of legends of or urban myths of people waking up on ice, missing a kidney, that kind of thing. And that does actually happen, but this is a whole different level that we're talking about. So that's one part. And the second part is that this particular industry, and I'd love to explain how it works because it's just kind of stunning what they figured out, is actually a perfect lens, a window into the mind of the Chinese Communist Party, of these people that, nationalized your mind. And I could, if you had read Kill to Order, you would have known they would do that, right? And that we've just misunderstood the true nature of our greatest adversary.
So who are they harvesting? Who are they call Uyghurs and all this, but
Well,
they're not taking
yeah.
from Chinese. They're taking from other human beings.
Well, so this is the thing, right? In communist China, life has been cheap for a very long time. It's, unarguably the biggest mass killer of its own people in the history of the world. So, but let me explain how it works. So, let's talk about forced organ harvesting here, and I'll kind of be able to paint you the picture. Okay. In communist China, you have a state actor, it's the Communist Party, and they have control over the whole system. So one, they control all the media structures, okay, i.e. propaganda structures. They can push mass propaganda into the population and they can dehumanize groups of people. This is incredibly important, okay, for this to get killed to order. Okay. And the second part is they're able to incarcerate huge amounts of people. They basically, they control a massive incarceration system, okay, that jails, re-education camps, re-education through labor camps, black jails, prisons, it goes on and on. And so what they figured out what to do is back in the late 90s, there was a very, very popular spiritual meditation discipline called Falun Gong. It had grown to 70 to 100 million people doing it. The people that did this practiced truthfulness, compassion, forbearance. These were the core principles. And also it was very grassroots, right? Passed from one person to another. And like there's not even hierarchy or worship or anything like that in the practice itself. So, but incredibly popular, health benefits, grew to 70 to 100 million people by the end of the 90s doing it. And that's when the regime, which was only 60 million Communist Party members, decided to crush it, to use the words of Jiang Zemin, the dictator of the time, to eradicate it, okay? Now, that didn't mean kill everybody. It meant put them into what they call their re-education system. And what that is you break people out of whatever it is that they're supposed to not believe, or that the regime deems inappropriate, and you create a black class of people. Okay, and these black classes have existed. There's always some group that the Communist Party is against, and everyone else wants to avoid becoming that group. And they started with the landowners, by the way, right? So they wanted to take the land, they wanted to nationalize it. So they demonized these people and they said, these are the people that caused all of your problems, Chinese people. It's okay to take their land and it's okay to kill them even if they don't cooperate. Okay. And then so that over the years, there's just been these different black classes. Falun Gong was just the most recent one. Okay. So here's the setup for kill to order. They dehumanize them through this terrible propaganda. Okay. And then they incarcerate, say, 1,000,000, maybe 2. We don't know. It's a state secret, but a huge amount. And then they start blood typing them, tissue typing, and organ scanning them. Okay, now why is this important? So in an ethical transplant situation, someone has to have a catastrophic accident. Okay, and they can't be completely dead because you can't transplant from when circulation is gone. The organs degrade too quickly. So someone has to have like a car accident, basically, or motorcycle accident, and then they have to match on blood type, tissue type, and that's rare. That's why you wait months or years sometimes to actually get your transplant.
Right.
But here, there were ads that actually said you can get it in 2 weeks, and there was even a whistleblower a surgeon, transplant surgeon, whose patient went and did it in 2 weeks, scheduled. Okay, so they knew. So in order to get that 2 week, you have to know when someone's going to be dead. In other words, we're not talking about a catastrophic accident. We're talking about someone being basically killed on schedule. Okay, on schedule. So that's one piece. And the other piece, the 2 weeks, how do you get that? Well, when you have a massive incarcerated population and you can create a database of all their blood types, tissue types, and sizes of organs and so forth, you have enough people that are already pre-matched. When that person comes in and pays their 100 grand or 200 grand for that heart, the donor, so-called donor, it's not really a donor, of course, right? They're an incarcerated prisoner of conscience. They're ready to be shipped and killed to order to give that heart to that person. This is what we're talking about. That's why it's called Kill to Order. That's why that's the title of my book. So this is a whole different level.
Yep. And one of my best friends is Dr. Radha Gopalan. He's a cardiologist here in Phoenix, Arizona, and he's also a doctor of acupuncture. And he is a heart and organ transplant doctor. He says he'll have patients here in the States, waiting for months and years. They're waiting for a certain person to get hit by a car wreck, or something happens. Whereas in China, they just go to I think the Nazis did a similar things to the Jews. They just go to the camps, said, oh, there's one. He's got the right blood type, right size, da-da-da-da. And they kill them to order. And again, I'll go back to went to military school in New York, and I had to read this book here. And the reason for that is my economics teacher said, know your enemy. And I'm trying to say one more thing. This is March 2026. And Iran just says we're going to start trading oil in yuan, which is Chinese money. So Jan, works with the Epoch Times, and they're fighting back against the Chinese. I fought them like crazy in Vietnam. And I just got back from Vietnam. This is March 2026. I just got back 3 weeks ago from Vietnam. The war was terrible, but they kind of did the same thing in Hanoi. It's terrible what war will do also. But we have to know our enemy. That's the most important thing. Don't think that, we're going to hold hands and sing Kumbaya with the Russians and the Chinese. We're crazy.
100%, 100%. And this is, the real tragedy. You mentioned the Uyghur people earlier in our discussion. And so when no one really did anything for years, they built this massive industry. We're talking 60 to 90,000 transplants per year annually. Okay, so this is really large scale. Okay, hundreds of hospitals we're talking about, and no one did anything for 14 or 15 years. And they added the Uyghur people as a second group to be done. They dehumanized them. They incarcerated a mass amount of them. Up in Xinjiang, it's even a whole police state. They even blood type and tissue type people in their homes up there, because the whole thing kind of functions a bit like a prison system up there. So this is one of the terrible things about it, is that it spreads with these extreme atrocity crimes. If you don't deal with it, if we don't challenge it, it actually spreads. And it's incredibly important to understand the mentality. You pointed this out. It's this very cold, cold view where everything just amounts to power. And even the human body, even the human individual is just a tool to be used or, cut into parts if needed for the good of the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah.
And so there's no kumbaya happening because even you can pretend a kumbaya, right? But the regime is always trying to figure out how to subvert you, how to break you, especially if you're America, because the regime views America as a kind of existential threat. It even designed its entire military to actually be able to fight the U.S. military. It's the only military sort of built
Yeah.
from the ground up to function that way.
Yeah. So, yeah, we need to take a break. So anyway, I want to thank you. We'll be right back. We'll go into more what Kill to Order, this book here, but why we have to know our enemy. And I don't say enemy lightly, because when they took my gold mine, I was a billionaire for about 3 months. And they just came in and said, thank you very much. So I learned a couple of words: country risk. Don't do business with people who don't play by the same rules. So we come back, more with Jan, and the author of Kill to Order, and why we have to know our Chinese adversaries today. We'll be right back.
Here's something they've never taught you in school. Every time the government prints money, somebody gets richer, and it's not you. The new money flows to banks first, then Wall Street, then asset makers. By the time it reaches your paycheck, it's already lost its value. Economists call it the cattle on the neck. Rich Dad calls it the biggest wealth transfer in history, and it's happening right now. So while you're saving dollars that buy less every year, the wealthy are converting those dollars into real assets. Assets the government can't print. Assets that rise every time they do. Gold and silver. Gold is up over 60% in the last year. Silver up 130%, both leaving the stock market behind. And the biggest banks on Wall Street say the run isn't over. Gold around $5,000 today. JP Morgan forecasts $6,300 by the end of the year. Silver around $80 today. Bank of America says it could reach $309 an ounce. The question isn't whether gold and silver are moving. The question is your retirement account positioned for it? Priority Gold's free Rich Dad Wealth Defense Guide shows you exactly how to add physical gold or silver to your IRA or 401k, tax and penalty free, with up to $10,000 in free silver on qualifying purchases. To get your free guide, call 866-703-9895 now. That's 866-703-9895. Or open a text message and text the word guide to 24999. Or click the link in the description below. Don't say the thing they're printing, own the things they can't. Start by getting your free Rich Dad Wealth Defense Guide now.
Welcome back. Very, very important guest today. This is Jan Jekielek. I apologize, like Ben's Kiyosaki. His book is Kill to Order, and it's about how the Chinese are organ harvesting people. It's a business. And like I said, my personal cardiologist here in Phoenix, Arizona, they have to wait for months for somebody to kind of accidentally get into an accident before they can match the heart or kidney or lung to the person. Whereas the Chinese, they're pretty cold-blooded. I mean, they're very cold-blooded people. And they put them in these concentration camps, Uyghurs and a religious order called Falun, I think. They're religious people who they disagree with. And it's a whole industry. They sell hearts and lungs and pieces of bodies and chicken wings, whatever they want. So, Jan, what can we do as individuals, other than buy your book here and understand our enemy? How do we fight back against this before we go so liberal and left-wing that that the Communist Republic of California starts inviting them in to have organ harvesting in California? We have so many people who are so liberal who thinks, well, we're doing good. We should be friends with the Chinese. They're not our friends. Jan, what do you have to say about that? How do we fight back?
Well, first of all, I'll say I do think that a great many Chinese people could actually be our friends. And I think a free China would be a huge boon to the world. And they'd give us a massive run for our money because, the stereotype of the Chinese being unbelievably hardworking is really true. I work with a whole bunch of freedom loving Chinese, and man, is it tough to keep up. Okay. And I,
Yeah.
I really think it'll just be an incredible country. The problem is actually it's a Western import. Communism is not a Chinese thing. It's a Western thing, right? And this Communist Party has, taken over and rules the country with an iron fist. And so you're asking about what we can do. And you mentioned buying the book. By the way, you can get it at killtoorder.com. That hits the Amazon link. But part of it is actually sharing the book or films about this, or just talking to your friends about the issue, because this is one of these issues where critical consciousness. I'm using the communist term here. Okay, there's like this critical level of when people actually understand it across society. I think it shifts, and I'll explain why I think that. It's just such an extreme issue, and it's really the first time in 20 years that I've been covering it that I see us being wise enough and ready enough to kind of to grasp it and to say, yes, this is real, and not like I would talk to people and people would literally like mentally leave the conversation as I would talk about it. And I sympathized with them because this is a very extreme thing, right? It's a crime against humanity, I would argue very strongly, right? Or at the very least, if not even worse than that. So the raising awareness and sharing it and so forth, and using the book as a tool. It's popular. It's a popular book. It's written for anyone to read, right? But so that's helpful. But there's a whole suite of things that you can do. I actually have a whole appendix dedicated to it in the book too, because we're also at a time when there are two pieces of legislation at the federal level that have passed the House near unanimously around this issue. It's uncanny, right? One is called the Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act. That's one that covers a broad range of this type of behavior, trafficking in the world, with a focus on China. And there's another one that just got reintroduced like 5 days ago as we're filming here. Senator Cruz and Senator Markley, bipartisan bill. It's the Falun Gong and Victims of Forced Organ Harvesting Protection Act. And it does a bunch of things that sanctions people who are involved, but it also establishes, it's asked to decide whether this is actually an atrocity under the Elie Wiesel Act. And so it would incredibly powerful to have, the first government to say, yes, actually, this is real. I mean, the evidence around this is voluminous. Okay, we've had 20 years of evidence gathered. There's a whole China tribunal that was created from 2018 to 2020 that it looked at the entirety of that evidence and found very quickly, absolutely, this is happening, and in all sorts of ways. But this would actually, we would say, yes, we officially understand this is real and it needs to end. So that's kind of a starting point.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we actually train some of these surgeons. We provide various technologies and materials and liquid solutions and things like that for the transplantation. We have research partnerships. We have funding partnerships between hospitals and universities. All of that, right? I am not someone who believes that I'm a complete isolationist and wants nothing to do with China or something like that. I'm not at all. In fact, I think we need to do it. We need to do it the right way, with our eyes wide open and understand who this adversary is. Okay. But when it comes to transplantation, we really should cut everything off, because basically we're working, if we're participating in this, it's an atrocity and we just shouldn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah. Once again, this is March 2026. Dates are important. And this war going on in Iran just said we're going to trade oil in yuan, Chinese currency. So the Chinese are taking over slowly but surely. As I said, in 1965, went to military school. We had to read this book. This was eye-opening. Because most school teachers in America are Marxists. Like, not bad people, but they have Marxist tendencies. So what Jan works for is an organization called the Epoch Times, EPOCH. And you guys are fighting communism. I did 2 tours in Vietnam. I just got back from my 3rd tour after going back several times. But we're still fighting communism. We have a Marxist mayor of New York now, this guy Mondami. And California they're now imposing a wealth tax. This guy Gavin Newsom, they're so broke. In California, taxation is communist. And most academics, like my poor dad, are communists. They're good people. They just don't know what they're doing. And Jan and I were talking about, I was in Hong Kong, and they used to do a lot of business out of Hong Kong until the Chinese crushed them. In 96, I think they took it away from them. And we don't know who we're dealing with. So this is 2026. And this has been warned about for years and years and years. And there's nothing more inhumane than putting people in a corral and organ harvesting. The Nazis did it to the Jews. If you've ever been to see what they were doing to the Jews, that's the same thing. So sports fans, we're not dealing with kind people here. They will do anything to make a buck, including put you in jail and take your heart out. Anything else, Jan?
Well, to your point, a couple of things. One is it's very sad that people that are kind of pro-communist and socialist and so forth here in America, they just don't understand what they're signing up for. And this is what Lenin called the useful idiots. I mean, that's his term, and then so what happens is they use these people, they take power, and then a number of those people actually get executed because they see the Communist Party starting to wield power in ways which don't appear to be for the people, that don't appear to be very egalitarian. And they say, hey, wait a second. And then it's too late because they don't have the guns and the communists do, and they exercise that power. So that's just a very, very sad aspect of this kind of process. But the good part here, okay, is that we can actually learn, like we have a tool right now. We understand this forced organ harvesting in communist China is real. We understand, and it's a feature. This is the thing that's most important to understand. It's a feature and not a bug, right? It's what you get in a communist system. And your point about there being there is a significant comparison to be made with what the Nazis did, with what the Germans did during World War II, which is they tried to extract every bit of wealth or value out of Jewish bodies. Right? You saw they would take like the gold fillings. They would take. This is disgusting, right? It's horrible. Like I'm just thinking back to visiting Auschwitz, which I've been to multiple times. I've just kind of been interested in these crimes against humanity for a very long time. But the hair, the prosthetic, basically any part, the skin, unbelievable. That it's this weird mentality where the human body is just a kind of something that can be used in this dehumanized, targeted black class. And of course, the Germans, they had multiple. They actually started with disabled people. Right. And eventually they got to the Jewish people. They were going to get Poles, by the way. I wouldn't be around if the Germans had their way, right, back in the day. So this take home message, you've been mentioning that they want to settle their oil in yuan. This is what Iran is announcing. And of course, communist China was buying 90% of Iran's oil, of course, sanctioned illicit shadow fleet oil. So I'm kind of not surprised they want to settle oil in yuan. The problem with settling oil in yuan is that it's not a convertible currency, and the Chinese Communist Party basically can control its value completely and can actually seize this is the thing, like there's all these American companies that have invested all this money, and notably Apple, right, in communist China, but that money actually isn't theirs. It's as much theirs as your mine was yours until that fateful moment where snap the fingers and suddenly, oh, sorry, Robert, this is actually for the good of the party. This is ours now. Forget your billion, forget your billionaire status, whatever. But you get the idea. So that's just how they operate. And I think it's a fantasy. These companies that have invested all this money without a massive amount of leverage from the U.S. government, or somehow they hold it in kind of forcing the Chinese Communist Party to give them what they actually earned or what they have there. I don't think they're ever getting that money back. I think it exists only on paper.
Well, the reason this book is so important is because if you read this book here, I wrote a book called The Capitalist Manifesto, and it's about how Stalin and those guys says the way to take over America was through the school system. And today, because the American kids and or the world Western kids, and today we have DEI, diversity, equality, inclusion, Marxist. I mean, how many more things do we have to look at? We cannot see it. That's the problem. And it's coming across as education. I mean, we now have student loan debt. Our students are now the biggest debtors ever. And we're weakening our people, and they can't afford, homelessness is increasing in America, which brought this guy Mondami, mayor of New York, the capitalist headquarters of the world, New York City, is now Marxist. But that's why I want to have Jan on, and his publication also is Epoch Times, EPOCH. Please fight back, because they're getting us through our minds. DEI, all this other crap. The victim mentality. It's so sick. Sick.
It's like a weaponization of envy. That's how I view communism, right? It's basically like, I do want to mention this super quick, okay?
Yeah, we have 1 minute left.
1 minute left, okay. We don't learn where prosperity comes from, and they teach you that there's a zero-sum game, and the only way you can become affluent is to take someone else's stuff. That is false. It's a big lie, and that's the lie the communists used to have their revolution. Right. So let's educate people around where prosperity comes from, and I think you're the perfect guy to do it.
Yeah, in 1930, the Columbia University Teachers College invited Marxist instructors from Germany to start teaching Marxism to our academics throughout America. That was 1930. Check it out. And that's why it's now spreading, called DEI and all this stuff. It's all this victim mentality. So anyway, I want to thank Jan, and appreciate your courage. I mean, I got a little bit afraid speaking out against it. But, Donald Trump and I have written 2 books together. Is one of our books, Why I Want You to Be Rich. Let's fight back. We fight back with education, not weapons or organs. Thank you, Jan.
Fight back with the truth. Thanks so much, Art. This is a wonderful chat. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, it takes courage to do this. So because they might come and knock on my door and take my organs too. Anyway, when we come back, we'll be with a final word from Rich Dad. So Jan, thank you very much. And his book is called Kill to Order.
Thank you.
Welcome back. I want to thank again Jan. A hard time with his name, but it's almost as bad as Kiyosaki. It's Kill to Order. It's about the Chinese. But also in 1965, I had to read this book here at military school. I Fight Back. And this is my other book. It's called The Capitalist Manifesto. And it says here, how to counter communism taught in our schools by teaching capitalism in our homes. That's what the cash flow board game is there for. So we can teach capitalism in our homes. Because if you don't teach them, our school teachers, most of them are good people, like my poor dad, but they're Marxists at heart. They believe in taking from the rich and putting it in their pockets. So I thank you again, education. We don't sell any information. We don't sell any investments, things like this. But education is one way to protect ourselves and our future. So again, thank you for watching The Rich Dad Show.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.